Hello and welcome to the video. In this video, I will be talking about some of my personal experiences while living and teaching in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia over the past couple of years. So, the first thing that I'll be talking about will be the exam procedures. Okay. So since I've been here, I've worked at two different universities. The first university that I spent most of my time here at was in an ultra-conservative area of the kingdom. Some people say that it's the most conservative area, and it very well could be. This area of Saudi Arabia is extremely sandy. Okay, it's very, very sandy. And because of this, people often go out wearing masks. There were often sandstorms that made it impossible for us to go out on the roads to even get to work. So I would say we probably had 8 sandstorms in a year. They're very, very dangerous. Like I said, a health hazard to go out into the weather outdoors when there are sandstorms. Let's see what else. Okay, so for the exam procedures in this area, I was very shocked at how coddled the students were. For example, say you're having a typical 60 or 90-minute exam. Well, you have teachers proctoring in the exams, and someone will bring in bottles of water for the students. There's always tissues for the students. They even supply pens and pencils. Like, the students don't bring any of these things with them, and they will not hesitate, like during the middle of the exam, to say, "Teacher, bring me tissue," or "Teacher, bring me water." Now, I'm not trying to say that they're rude. However, they do sometimes come off as extremely rude because we don't necessarily teach them politeness strategies or anything like that. So as they're taking the exams, it's the teacher's responsibility to go by each student's desk and check their IDs, make sure that they wrote their names and their IDs on their tests. Now, if a teacher were to somehow forget to check a student's ID and name on their test, the teacher would get extremely chastised about it. And it is really weird to me because it seems as though, or rather, it is this way. There's really no agency and no responsibility for the students to make sure that they do these things on their own, because if it were, then the teachers wouldn't get into so much trouble about it, and we wouldn't have to almost baby them and make sure that they do this correctly and this correctly and this correctly. And it could be because in this country they're not as used to testing as, say, an American like me, where we've been testing since grade school. We're used to having to do these things. So in both schools, the exam procedures are pretty much the same. You still do have a lot of students asking for tissue, and it's just really weird. I've never seen this happen before. In the new school, we don't give out water during the exams or anything like that. But yeah. Oh, by the way, so the first school has a population, the general population of the city is 600,000. The second school's population is 900,000. Let's see. So next, let's talk about the curriculum. So yes, what is the curriculum like? Okay, so in the first university and the ultra-conservative city, they use the Unlock books by Cambridge. Now, these books are extremely ethnocentric in that they talk about Saudi and Saudi culture. And I thought that that was a little bit strange, but not as strange as having to have discussions about cultural things that didn't really translate from one culture to the next. Like sometimes we would talk about and learn about marriage in the UK, and marriage in the UK is much different than marriage in Saudi Arabia is, as far as like age and how people celebrate and things like that. So whenever we would get to the writing assignment at the end, or when we get to discussions about marriage, I think some of the students were confused as to whether or not they should talk about their own culture or if they should talk about what they had just learned about. And so we would often have these like painful silences while we were discussing these things. The books overall, I think, were okay. They were using, listening and speaking and reading and writing. If you taught reading and writing like I did at a level 3, you often had an extra like 5 to 7 hours of work that you had to do outside of work, like during the weekend. I say 5 to 7 because for a whole year actually, I taught 2 writing classes at a level 3 and a listening and speaking class at maybe like level 2. But listening and speaking didn't require any outside of work time. That really got to me after a while, but let's stick to the topic. So on to and the curriculum uses many different books, but the general books that they use are the Headway books by Oxford. Now, I never got a chance to use these books because they were doing some sort of thing where they were also using some sort of handout outline thing that someone had made. And I actually think that the way that they taught the grammar was really good because it was really formulaic and mathematical almost. However, the handouts and the packets were riddled with mistakes, like absolutely riddled with mistakes. And I almost wonder how incompetent the students must have thought that we were, being that we had given them the material to learn with. But yeah, so I think that maybe they were trying to see what works better for the students, like this teacher created content, or the nice publicized content made by Oxford. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Let's see. Okay, now we will talk about some of the strangest things that have ever been said to me. Let's see. So the first 4 or 5 things rather were said to me when I first got here, when I was in the first ultra-conservative city. I don't even know how to begin to tell you how illogical a lot of the conversation here could be. I think a lot of it just has to do with control and power. You have a lot of Egyptians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, a lot of Southeast Asians, not Egyptian, of course not. But I feel like, and if I'm wrong, but I've been here long enough to experience it and think about it, and I think that because they are from poor countries, that they have different communication strategies and management strategies, and maybe just flat out insecurities, and so sometimes they come across as like really abrasive or illogical, because sometimes I just think that they don't really want to be readable or relatable even sometimes, and you'll get an idea after I read some of these instances to you. So the first one has to do with WhatsApp. When I first got here, a lot of the teachers were telling me this is the way that they would communicate with their students. Okay, they would use the application WhatsApp, and I personally didn't feel comfortable doing it. And strangely enough, even though I didn't feel comfortable doing it, and as a result didn't do it, I still got in trouble for using WhatsApp, even though I wasn't using it. Oh my goodness. I don't. So again, the teachers who had already been working there were already using it, but somehow I got in trouble for using it. I was brought into the office, and my coordinator said to me, while there were other supervisors that worked there, she said, yeah, some of the students have said that you've been using WhatsApp with them. And I just looked, I sat back, and I had to laugh about it, because I wasn't using it, and I was told to use it by teachers that had been there for 3 years at that point. So yeah, stuff like that would happen. This same group of strange people, oh man, this was such a rough time. So I was teaching academic writing. You know, when you're teaching academic writing, you teach with introductory sentences and topic sentences and conclusory sentences. And that's how you teach them to structure their ideas and their writing. If you are trying to teach them academic writing, I believe that it will be impossible to teach them without teaching them how to structure it first. And I got reprimanded for teaching them how to organize their thoughts, their writing, and their ideas. And she said something along the lines of, just let them write it however they'll write it. And before, when I inherited this class, the writing program was, oh goodness. Their writing was very scattered and all over the place. They weren't even indenting or leaving any lines between paragraphs, and it was extremely hard to grade and manage. And it was just shocking to me that I was supposed to teach some academic writing in an unorganized, illogical way. So that's another thing that came up. Okay, again, this is with the same group. So I was pulled into the office and told that, I was told with a straight face by this lady that the students are complaining because they say that you spend most of the class period taking attendance. Like, how do you, this is what I'm saying, like, this sort of logic and these sort of psychological, they're almost psychological attacks in a way, like, where you don't know what to say, where you don't even know how to begin to resolve the situation because it's just so strange that you can't really do anything. So that too was said. So here's a really funny comment that a student made. Oh boy. So this student goes, I don't remember what I said either. She goes, that's not how Americans say it. And I said, well, what do you think I am? Like, come on, like, just, they're very rude students. I haven't been teaching for a very, very long time, but I would say about 5 to 10% of the students just have really bad behavioral problems, and it's shocking because they're over 18 at that point. However, they still don't know how to manage themselves and their behavior and their lives even. It's very, very unfortunate. Okay, so the last thing that I'll talk about is being called kefir. I was called that the first time that I heard it by this guy whose daughter had some sort of facial deformity in the mall. He just kind of said it and I was like, what? I better go look up this term. It means infidel or non-religious person, non-believer, which I guess in some ways is true because I am not religious by any means, especially after having lived here and seen the consequences of a non-moderate religion. The other time I was called it was actually like a week ago when I was going to the local bookstore and the little girl said it. She was with her dad and maybe her brother, and I think her dad said, what? Or like it was kind of like a huh? So I think she surprised her father that time. Alright, so I've come to the end of my little discussion, and I would love for you to ask any questions that you might be interested in knowing about or hearing about. And yeah, that's all. Down below, get your questions in and we'll talk later. Bye.